Risk of Rain 2 is a roguelite survival game with an emphasis on surviving as long as you can while fighting against the clock. Collect your items and make a build to max out your hobo feathers so that you can hope to take advantage of the game's great jumping system to reach the end of a level. And recently, the game's first expansion, Survivors of the Void, released, adding dangerous new Void enemies, including a new boss, corrupted items, 2 new characters, the Railgunner and the Void Fiend, and finally, a brand new game mode called the Simulacrum. All of this combines to minimize some of the frustrations I've had with the game in the past, such as not having a game mode to jump into and play when I didn't want to think about being on the clock, while also making the best elements that Risk of Rain 2 is known for, such as the various items and builds, even better. So, in today's video, I'm going to talk about why, if you're a fan of Risk of Rain 2, you should buy Survivors of the Void, and if you're not a fan of Risk of Rain 2, really, what are you doing with your life? You can't even jump 5 times, so you should probably fix that. To start off with, the Simulacrum is a wave-based game mode with increasing difficulty as you battle through waves of enemies with 10 waves per stage, and a slight shift across the stage every 5 waves after a boss encounter. Whenever you complete a wave, it starts a short timer until the next wave begins, and also rewards you with an item where you get to pick from 3 different options. After every 10th wave, you can take as long as you want to go exploring and buy items to prepare for the next set. Though do keep in mind, you have a personal safety bubble, and if you go outside of that safety bubble, the planet will literally start killing you, so you can't really wander around freely and do everything that you want. With enough healing items though, you can buy a few nice pieces before you go on to the next level. Now, I mentioned earlier, this doesn't use a timer, but that's not entirely true. While enemies are active, there is technically a timer, after which the safe zone will begin to shrink, exposing you and anything outside of it to the dangerous, damaging atmosphere of a planet. But because most enemies tend to be within the bubble anyway, and you can reach and kill them, this really doesn't feel like a timed game mode. Personally, I really like the Simulacrum, as it's a great way to just jump in and try pushing a character to become the most screen-exploding machine possible without having to think about item locations, the stage you're on, or the timer. The game mode does heavily favor characters with abilities that are good at clearing the screen, or dealing damage to a lot of small enemies. It also does tend to punish characters who have worse mobility options. So it's not perfect, but overall, when I'm looking for something short and reasonably self-contained, it's a nice break from the regular Risk of Rain 2 gameplay. Though if you decide to do a regular run, then keep an eye out for these corrupted purple bubbles. Entering the zone will cause you to take ticking damage, and there's going to be several small void bugs looking to infect nearby enemies, taking them over and making them far more dangerous. But if you're able to defeat these enemies, you'll gain access to a lot of goodies, including stocks which you can activate to get more coins, much like the capsules, and also void corrupted chests. Unlike a normal chest, a void corrupted chest will cost you 50% of your life, though this works like the Shrine of Sacrifice, where you can block the damage and sometimes avoid taking it. Opening the chest will grant you a powerful void item that changes the functionality of normal items that you might be holding, by corrupting all of the copies. These items are a really nice way to expand build diversity while giving existing players a somewhat familiar tool with a new purpose. For example, Bustling Fungus normally creates a healing zone around you whenever you remain stationary for 1 second. The zone will heal all nearby allies as long as you remain still. The corrupting version is the Weeping Fungus, which heals you every second while you're sprinting, and no more healing for your allies. They'll have to get their own. On the other hand, one of my personal favorites is the Voidsent Flame, which causes full health enemies to explode when hit, spawning a pillar of lava to damage all nearby enemies. This is the corrupted form of Will-o'-the-Wisp, so you won't be able to use that to explode them on kill as well. Another of my favorites is Safer Spaces, which blocks an incoming hit, preventing all damage from that hit before being disabled for 15 seconds, while corrupting all tougher times. The more of them you stack, the shorter the cooldown before it'll block a hit again. The reason I like this is, if one hit gets through your block with several tougher times, then you could still be dead. On the other hand, if you block the first hit, then it's something that lets you play around it, rather than just hoping an effect procs to keep you from dying. Now, I also mentioned that Survivors of the Void adds 2 new characters, but before I get into details on that, a quick reminder that if you've been enjoying the video, be sure to leave a like to tell YouTube to recommend the video to more people. If you want to see more Risk of Rain 2 content, gaming news, reviews, and video essays, then be sure to sub to the channel and ring the bell to be notified whenever I upload. And if you've liked what you've seen so far in terms of Risk of Rain 2 and want to pick up a copy for yourself, you can do so through my Nexus, where a portion of your purchase will help to directly support me and therefore this channel. But for now, let's get back to talking about those characters, because there's 2 of them and each has their own unique playstyle. First of all, we have the Void Fiend, for players who really like staring into the abyss. And the Void Fiend has a very unique playstyle because it constantly rotates between two different forms based on corruption level. The Void Fiend gains corruption over time, when taking damage, and also for dealing crits or carrying void items. While corrupted, corruption will drain over time, and your corruption is further depleted when you receive healing, regardless of a form you're in. In its normal form, the Void Fiend is kind of a medium long-range character with the ability to consume corruption to heal itself, giving it massive survivability, especially when you have decent corruption generation. Since remember, taking damage generates corruption. On the other hand, when it reaches 100% corruption, it transforms into the harder-hitting but closer-range character who can consume health to bolster corruption to continue to deal high damage. Correctly managing this becomes a fun little minigame, and proper timing can make the difference in how quickly you're able to take down bosses, as the corrupted form is far better at this, whereas for normal farming and just getting around, I personally like the regular form a little bit better. Now the Railgunner, on the other hand, is based around the idea of hit once, hit hard. She converts all of her critical strike chance into crit damage, therefore she can't normally deal a critical strike. But her ability to deal a crit strike comes from striking enemy weak points with specific abilities, such as her M99 sniper. This is an especially cool one because it adds a Gears of War style reload mechanic. Doing a perfect reload will increase the base damage of the next shot by 500%. And remember, if you land that shot on a weak point, it'll be an auto crit. Her special skill Supercharge also feels amazing when you land it on a weak point, since you can outright one-shot a lot of the bosses. However, for as good as it does feel when you land that crit, and trust me, it feels amazing, it feels equally bad when you miss because Supercharge disables all weapons for 5 seconds after you use it. This leads to a bit of a more tactical playstyle, where you stay back, line up your shots, and hope to kill the enemy instantly. You can skirmish a little bit with the XQR Smart Round system, but it's not very effective against higher health enemies. So the Railgunner does take a little bit of getting used to, as she's kind of the opposite of a lot of other characters. She'll be very good at dealing with bosses, often taking them down with a single shot, but her weakness is dealing with swarms of small, weaker enemies. So be sure to have some gasoline on hand or other clear effects if you want a smooth run. So is Legacy of the Void a good expansion for Risk of Rain 2, and should you buy it? Well, Legacy of the Void does a great job of expanding all the things that Risk of Rain 2's core game loop already does really well. It lets you confront the Void to obtain powerful new items, while also adding 2 new entries, the Void Fiend and Railgunner, to the already very diverse lineup of different playstyles that Risk of Rain 2 offers. Personally, I love the way the new Void items are both really familiar and also a little bit different, which makes them new and exciting. I tend to grab them probably a little bit more than I should, even to my own build's detriment sometimes. But that isn't to say they're weak. In fact, many of them are incredibly powerful, such as the Voidsent Flame, which is well worth giving up the Will-o'-the-Wisps for. Causing enemies to explode on full health and instantly one-shot entire screens is way better than having to kill something to then one-shot all its friends. Plus, if you want to slow down and play the game at a slightly more relaxed pace, I suggest the Simulacrum. It's still very frenetic and frantic combat, but you don't have to worry about that timer and that nagging thought in the back of your mind of, should I loot this, should I get enough gold, or is the timer going to get me killed later? So overall, if you liked everything that Risk of Rain 2 already had to offer, I very much suggest Legacy of the Void. Check out the Railgunner, or the Void Fiend if staring into the abyss is more your style. Be sure to jump into the Simulacrum, and also keep an eye out for that new boss, although that might be a secret for another time. I plan to cover the Railgunner and Void Fiend in a little bit more depth in a future video, along with why I find Risk of Rain 2 so fun to play even when I'm not trying to win. I'm just kind of going through, focusing on my build, and enjoying the gameplay on a moment-to-moment basis. But for now, I only have one question. What's the best Void item that was added with this expansion, and why is it the Voidsent Flame or Safer Spaces? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, be sure to put them down in the comments below, or join the Discord, where you can ask questions, get build help, and hang out with the community. A special thanks to my patrons and YouTube channel members. They're awesome, and they get to show it by having their name on screen in the credits of all my videos. So if you want to see your name here, be sure to check the link in the description. You can also help support me by purchasing Steam games through my Nexus. And if you want a water bottle or a cool shirt, I have a link to my official merch shop in the description. I hope you learned something today, and I hope to see you again sometime soon.